Some time ago, ArenaNet tried to convince Necromancers to stay in Death Shroud more. Sadly, this didn't work, but the Necromancer profession mechanic shouldn't be downhearted because ArenaNet are back for a second attempt. Curses, Death Magic, Blood Magic, and Soul Reaping have all gained new traits empowering Death Shroud. Path of Corruption associates itself with curses and causes Dark Path to convert 2 boons into conditions. As Dark Path produces an area of effect attack, in group situations Dark Path will apply significant boon and condition pressure, the equivalent of 2 conversions every 3 seconds, more if Path of Midnight is used. Unholy Sanctuary springs into life at the end of the Death Magic line. It applies a copy of Regeneration while in Death Shroud. While this is certainly a good trait, it's perhaps not quite worthy of 6 trait points, so unless you plan on using some kind of invincible Shroud build, it's probably not a fantastic choice. Blood Magic has a much more interesting contribution, Unholy Martyr. It draws 1 condition from nearby allies every 3 seconds while in Death Shroud, and restores 5% life force for each one. While the concept is interesting, it fails magnificently with its number of targets, 1. Therefore, it only restores a maximum of 1.6% life force per second, less than half of the natural drain. This weakness is merely secondary though, as the true issue is that to make even a dent on the conditions of nearby players, you'll need to stand next to them for at least 1,000 years. Finally, Soul Reaping, which gained Renewing Blast, causing Life Blast to heal allies struck by it. While the healing power scaling is surprisingly good at 45%, it's not particularly important, as the base value of 345 means that the healing output of Life Blast can in theory rise to 1725 per second, with 0 healing power. This trait is worth using simply for the irony that a Shroud of Death can provide one of the strongest group healing abilities in the game. The odd one out of the new Grandmaster traits is from Spite, by the name of Parasitic Contagion. It heals Necromancers for 5% of the condition damage dealt. A recurring theme here is the emphasis on group play, as on a single target, Parasitic Contagion simply acts as a more powerful version of Regeneration, but it will really come into its own when dealing with more than one opponent. Having thousands of damage ticking away on multiple foes will doubtlessly provide some impressive green numbers. A few other things have either appeared from nowhere, moved around, or been modified, the first of which is Reanimator, which has been merged with Death Nova, a Grandmaster Death Magic trait. While this isn't much of an incentive to invest in the line of death, its replacement, Armored Shroud, which as expected adds 170 points of toughness while in Death Shroud, is perfectly average, but not anything special. Slightly further down the line is Protection of the Horde, which is also fusing with another trait, Flesh of the Master. This is unfortunate, as a source of some free toughness has been pushed a little out of reach, as it now has to compete with the numerous strong Death Magic major traits. And its replacement Soul Comprehension is not particularly useful. It increases life force gain from nearby fatalities by 20%. In other words, killing a foe will restore 12% life force. Maybe this makes a difference somewhere, but probably not. The last tweak is to Dhuumfire, the most changed trait in history. It now causes Life Blast to set fire to enemies for 3 seconds with a 10-second cooldown. This is unified across PvE and PvP. The limiting of its functionality means that this once powerful trait is much worse, possibly even unusable.